So starting with the basics, and before we dive into that LinkMyBooks whole story, which is super interesting, and what you've built, how on earth did you get into the e-commerce world, and what did you start? What did you build? What did you create?
That is an interesting one. So I think I've always been quite entrepreneurial, really, right from the get-go. Like in school, I know you're saying Shelley used to sell sweets out of a locker. Mine was cans of Coke. I used to go to the shop on the way, buy a multi-pack, and then sell them at break time. And that was when I was like 11 or 12. And then I really wanted to sell on eBay. I thought that was quite cool. And so I used to go down to Poundland, and I used to buy stuff that I thought, well, actually, I can probably sell that for more on eBay. And then I would go home and put it on eBay, and I would sell it on eBay. And that was when I was like 13, 14. And so I think I always had that sort of like entrepreneurial fire. That's what really drove me. I really got a good kick from it. And then I went into like a typical sales job. I worked in a phone shop. I don't know if you remember the Link. I used to have a tie, and I thought that was quite funny.
A tie for you? I've never ever seen you in a tie.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I worked there, and still like I enjoyed the sort of sales side of things. And then I went off and became a drug rep. So I sold medicines to doctors. And then that's when I sort of realized that I wasn't really lighting the fire. I was still selling, and I was making good money, and I had a nice company car, and I'd got to pick it, and I thought that was quite cool. But I didn't feel like I was scratching that itch. And so I then started like a little side hustle. I was selling swimming goggles that I'd found in China. I like made my own logo. I called it Olympic Nation. And I basically started selling them on Amazon. Yeah, it was quite cool name. Yeah. Definitely got in trouble with the Olympic Committee in the end. And they sold quite well right from the beginning. Like I basically jumped in. Well, actually, that's not exactly true, because I didn't sell them straight away. The first thing that I did was a bit of retail arbitrage. So I'd sort of done that earlier in life, where I'd bought stuff in Poundland and sold on eBay. And then I realized that a little side hustle when I was later in life was that I could buy stuff in like IKEA and in Boots, and then you could flip them for more on Amazon. And so that's what I started doing. And then I realized that really wasn't scalable, because I was filling the car every single day on the way back from work with IKEA stuff and stuff from Boots, and then sending it in Amazon and flipping it. And then I realized that the way to really make money on Amazon was to do private label. And that's where the goggles came about. So then I started to research what private label was, had a bit of money behind us from doing the retail arbitrage stuff. So took some of that profit and placed the first order for the goggles. And then that was it. I was hooked. And it was like, okay, bye-bye retail arbitrage, bye-bye like going and filling the car with stuff, and hello to ordering stuff from China, getting it straight into Amazon, and then just watching the money roll in. I mean, obviously it's harder than that, but that was like the short version of it.
Well, exactly. I mean, as we went through in the earlier episodes, like putting the whole structure together, like picking the products, and I was saying to Shelley, how do you pick the products? And going through all that, getting to the money rolled in, there is a lot of work that goes into it. So I think we all appreciate the effort going in. But so goggles. Did you actually like tell us why you picked goggles out of all the things you could have picked? What was it? What was it about goggles?
That was actually my wife's idea, to be honest.
Oh, was it?
We were looking at like ways to do private label, and we ended up doing this course called Amazing Seller Machine, which is a whole story in itself, but we're not getting into that today. That basically is like a course where it teaches you how to sell on Amazon from start to finish, private label, and how to pick the products and everything, and like all the marketing, etc., etc. And one of the things that they said was it should be small and light, and it should be a relatively like frequently selling product. And so we decided that because both me and her are quite sporty, that we wanted it to be something in sports and outdoors. And so we're looking at like, what are the most popular sports in the UK? And believe it or not, I don't know if it's true still, but behind football, swimming is like the second most popular sport in the UK. So we were like, okay, so what about if we chose something to do with swimming? And what can you buy? You can buy trunks, you can buy flippers, you can buy floats, you can buy goggles. Okay, goggles are quite small and they're quite light. What about if we looked at those? And sure enough, there was like a handful of private label ones that were doing really good numbers, like 150, 200 pairs per day. And so we were like, okay, this is a big opportunity. And so then we came in and basically found a competing pair of goggles, looked at all the reviews of all the existing ones that were there, picked out all the things that people said was rubbish about them. And we worked with some suppliers who'd sent us some samples to say, could we improve X, Y, and Z? And then we came to the market with a slightly better pair of goggles with our own brand on. And then that's the start of the story, I guess.
But it's a genius thing to pick, though, isn't it? Because in terms of swimming being, right up there, and I didn't realize it was that high up there. I used to do a lot of swimming because that was my de-stress when I set up Pure 360. I used to go up the road and bang out 50 lengths and then go back and then sit with the sales team, and that was a perfect de-stress. But you have to have goggles if you're going to swim properly. Even the kids want goggles. They're wanting to dive down, but it is small and light, isn't it? And it's a circa tenner? Is it a tenner's worth?
Yeah, we sold them for like $9.99. I think we bought them for like $1.20 and sold them for $9.99. So it was decent margins, and decent volumes as well. So it was like a really good blockbuster product right out the gate. And I don't think that's typical. I think we just sort of landed on a pretty good product. And then because there was you've basically got Speedo and Oceana, whatever they're called, who are the big brands. And then you had loads of private label ones, but nobody was really doing it right in terms of finding out what people didn't like about the existing ones and making actual improvements. Everyone was just like, that's the best selling pair. I'm going to find them in China. I'm going to sell them as well. And then it's just a race to the bottom as to who can have the lowest price. But if you genuinely add value to the customer, to the product, and make it so that you could we even used to start our description with, unlike all other pairs of goggles which have XYZ problem, ours, Olympic Nation goggles, are blah, blah, blah. And it was anti-fog, or it had a little clip on the back instead of a strap that you adjusted. So it was just clip them on, clip them off. And nobody else was doing that type of thing. So it was just about finding some way to differentiate yourself apart from on price.
That is absolutely brilliant. I now, but it's brought home to me all of the issues are you're putting them on, you can actually slip, and then it digs into your eye, and it's really tight. And you're loosening off the Speedos was a nightmare. You're trying to feed it through that little bracelety thing on the side. It was an absolute. So I think that's an absolute genius product. So, are you prepared to reveal any numbers here, how successful was this, and what about the margins?
Yeah, so I think my NDA is probably well run out now because I sold that one back in 2015, 2016. So that one, I think we grew to, it was doing around 150 pairs of goggles per day.
Wow.
We were selling across the UK and the rest of the European marketplaces. We hadn't gone into the US or anywhere like that at that time. Japan and places like that didn't even really exist as marketplaces back then. Excuse me. So in terms of revenue, I can't really remember, if I'm honest. I do remember that we sold that business for low six figures. It was 250, 300K sort of mark. That's what we ended up selling that for. And then the reason we sold it was because we got to that point where we realized that the way to grow this business is to add more products. And we had a whole list of products that we wanted to add, but it was cash flow was holding us back. It was in order to get the bulk discounts and in order to meet the demand that we were selling those 150 pairs a day, we had to order quite a lot of goggles, and they were coming in containers. And so you were ordering them months in advance, paying 30% up front, and then they were being put on the boat. You were paying the remaining 70%, and then you had to wait a month for them to get in stock. So you're sitting on a lot of inventory all the time, and that's what was holding us back. And so we realized that, okay, what about if we sold this, cashed out on that product, and then used that money to start 5 or 6 more products in one go. So resolve the cash flow problem overnight. And that's exactly what we did. We had a list of 25. These are the next products we want to look at. These are the hot opportunities. And on day one, we launched 5 of them basically. And then we launched a product. We launched 2 products every month from that point onwards. And we ended up growing that next Amazon business to 25 SKUs. In fact, it might have even been more with variations.
Wow. That's a really, really clever tactic. So I would have wondered, because that's exactly what I was asking Shelley about. How do you pick the products, and then how do you buy enough in, and where is that money coming from? Is a lot of these smaller people, or the starting e-commerce people don't have hardly any cash to buy an inventory, and without the inventory, then the audience has gone off. Amazon's probably deprofiled it, or whatever the correct word is. It's gone right down the list. So actually selling that one business financed the next one. But and that would have been a fairly healthy chunk of money to go in to buy the inventory, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think nowadays you've got a lot more options as a seller. You've got there's a lot of seller financing options like Amazon, Shopify, eBay. They all do loans like directly in the platform.
Exactly.
So once you've been selling for a year, they'll basically give you an offer inside your Seller Central account, and then they'll basically take it out of your payouts automatically, so you don't really have to do anything. And then there's loads of companies that have popped up that'll do like specifically financing for these type of sellers. But back in 2014, 15, there was none of that. So it was like, use your own money, use a credit card, get a bank loan, which they wouldn't be very happy about. I remember saying I was going to buy a car and then using that money to buy inventory. Like, they don't really know what's actually getting spent on, but like, it's just really hard to finance back then. Now it's a bit easier.
No, exactly. I actually, funnily enough, Dan, I remember going into, it's one of the city banks, and they wanted to create a whole contractor accounting current account and a contract accounting service with Crunch. And I remember, like, we're talking about like a lot of C-level people around this massive boardroom table. And I went into my story and I said, like, I started Pure 360 in the bungalow, and I because I'd been in the city before, I had access to loans. So I bought a couple of cars, but they wasn't really the cars. It was going into the cash flow of the business. I went, maybe I shouldn't have said that. I'm actually in the presence of a bank, pitching to a bank, and they all thought it was quite amusing.
Yeah. It's all right to talk to you about, maybe not in the bank. No.
No. That was almost one of my classic moments. But they thought it was quite endearing because they had a lot of firms like Crunch going in pitching, all like stiff and not real. And I'm, as you know, as authentic as I come.
Everyone's a real person under the surface.
Exactly. So because that's immediately where I went to is you're going to need to get a loan to start financing that. But I think that's a genius way to single private label. You were so lucky that worked. I mean, it's almost the perfect product. I think today it'd be fairly difficult, wouldn't it? Given the sheer competition.
Yeah, I think
and
so.
Selling that whole business, lock, stock and barrel, lock, stock and goggles, and then financing 25 other product lines. I think was that. And you stayed in the private label line.
Yeah, exactly. It was still private label at that point. We're expanded out to like US marketplace as well. So we're selling in Europe and in the US. Probably about 30% of the business, 30 or 40 came from US and 60 came from UK and the other European marketplaces. But it just gave us like a blueprint to like, let's go and do this again. And then the second time you do it, you're better. The third time you do it, you're even better again. And then it's just like rinse and repeat. And back then, I'm talking, it's like, this was 2016 to 2018. I ran that second one. And it was like the golden era of being an Amazon seller, because there was a lot less sellers. There was a lot less Chinese sellers who were like rock bottom prices on everything. And there wasn't many people who were doing it right, in my opinion, like finding out what was wrong with the product, actually making a difference, and then doing genuinely good photography and like listing optimization. Like, everyone thought that it was just some sort of trick and you had to like use hacks to get there and everywhere. But long-term success on Amazon at that point came from standing out above the competition for not just the price and not just some gimmicky way of getting there.
So all of almost the techniques that we would use on the web, like proper SEO techniques, careful, like, good pictures, great copy, not just flooded with SEO words. So you do all the same approach in Amazon, excellent photography, carefully thought about descriptions, like list. I mean, this is a world you really, really know, and we're trying to help. With these webinars, help an audience that is starting and probably is middle down the road of being a success. So there's probably a whole series on those specifics you talk about. In that second business, was there any other challenges, any other like key milestones as you built it up? And then it'd be, at what point did you go like, we've done a great job, to your wife, like, should we let this one go?
Yeah, I think when we hit 1 million in revenue, like, that was a pretty big moment. I think we did that probably after 9 months because we already had loads of products lined up, basically. I think we grew that to about 4 million in turnover. And so that was like quite an achievement, considering it was just me and her. And like, we were running it with a bunch of VAs doing some stuff for us as well. I think the reason we decided to sell it was twofold. One was we got a bit sick of the rinse and repeat. Like, once you've done something 25 times, it starts to feel a bit more like a job. And I think we were making like gradually more money every time. But it was either, okay, we need to find some people to go and do this for us and like really expand the company out, which a guy who I had on my podcast called Aaron Cordoves, he started exactly the same time as me in the US. He now is one of the top 100 Amazon sellers. He does 100 million in revenue. And we started on the same course with Amazing Seller Machine. So maybe I should have gone that route in hindsight. He's built out a massive team. But for us, it was just the right...
$100 million was that?
Yeah, he does $100 million in revenue. This year, he's on track to do 100 million revenue.
Oh my God. It is staggering, isn't it? And I think, anybody watching this webinar, it's got to be exciting, hasn't it? That any of us, if you really, really work hard and you apply, as much learning as you can, these courses, other courses to super tune the whole thing, you can really, really be successful.
Yeah. And then he was telling, this is going a bit off track, but he was telling me that he's got a podcast as well, the Aaron Cordoves Show, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And he had a guest on, which was like the second biggest Amazon seller. Can't remember what he's called. Something marketplace. And he has, I'm pretty sure it's like 20,000 people in his team, for starters. It's based in India. And I'm sure they do something ridiculous like 60 billion in sales. $60 billion in sales on Amazon, or maybe $6 billion or something like that. It's like a ridiculously high number. And they are all just private label as well. There's got so many products. And so that's what I'm saying. At that point, we sort of decided, okay, well, what we can do here is we can either like expand out a team and we can find like people who can just go out and find more products, people who can deal with the suppliers and get like samples, and who can like do the logistics, and people who can deal with the customer support. And you can build a proper company out of this. But the second reason that we didn't want to do that was because like we got a bit sick of like dealing with Amazon's bureaucracy, where it's like one day you wake up to an email and they've blocked your product because of some stupid reason. And it's like that impossible to deal with. So you send the email to seller support and then you get some like dry, unformatted, like copy and paste response back, and you're going round and round in circles for days. And your product is slowly just like dropping down the rankings.
Yeah.
And then you finally get it back and you're on page 2 and you have to start again. It's like, oh. And so we got a bit sick of that. And then at the time I was listening to a podcast, which was called the FBA High Rollers podcast. I don't think it exists anymore. And he was talking about how he was going to sell his business through a company called Empire Flippers, and that he was shocked that they were going to take 15% and all that. That was the story. But he said that it made him realize just how much these businesses are worth. And so I immediately then went to Empire Flippers and got them to value mine. And I realized that if I sold it, that because of the size that it was at, I would have to continue, if I didn't grow it at all, I would have to continue running it for 7 years to get the same amount of money in my pocket after tax because of Entrepreneurs Relief at the time. So Entrepreneurs Relief at the time was like £10 million. So I could sell the business, pay 10% tax, or I could continue running the business and take out my normal like salary and dividends and stuff. And I would have to continue running it for 7 years in order to make that same money in my pocket. And so at that point, I was like, let's just sell it and start again. We'll sell this one and we'll start again. And that's when I thought, actually, do I really want to start again? Or do I want to do something in the same space, but let's move into software now? Like we've seen so many things that people have problems with. Let's just find a solution in that sense and treat it like we do with physical products. Like what do people have now? What do they not like about those things? How can we make it better? And how can we make it a better value proposition? And so we just moved that idea of physical products into SaaS. And that's where we are now.
No, well, that Dan is an absolute perfect segue in the story. I think you've done this before, haven't you?
A few times.
So, I mean, you could have set up like a, an Amazon agency, like how to perfect it, or if you'd been running it for them, that you wouldn't have wanted to do that because you would have had it multiplied for clients that you're working for. You might as well make the money yourself, or you could have been the agency providing all the advice or creating courses. But you chose something super interesting, and this is where it comes into LinkMyBooks perfectly. How did you get to that idea of this SaaS using all of your experience? Why did you pick that? Tell us more about what is LinkMyBooks and how did you get to that?
It was a genuine like problem solution-based business. So it was like we had personally faced these problems. Like when we're running the business, it was like the first one was sold. We realized that the books just weren't in order and the broker had to like redo everything in order for it to be sold. And at that point, I was like, okay, now I'm going to keep my books in complete order. I'm going to do accrual accounting. Everything's going to be well above board. I'm going to learn exactly how to do everything. But then an e-commerce business, it's like, it's not easy to run the books because you've got orders going all over the world. So you've got international tax to play with. And then you've got like some products are taxable, some products aren't. So you've got that to play with. And then you've got like an ever-changing scenarios with Amazon and all the other marketplaces where it's like, okay, actually, we are going to collect VAT on these orders, but not on those orders. So you're responsible for them and we're responsible for them. It's like, how on earth is someone who's not an accountant or bookkeeper supposed to like keep track of all that? Even the accountants and bookkeepers, how are they supposed to keep track of all that? No, so exactly. I thought there must be a way to like have the data coming from Amazon to go into your Xero or your QuickBooks account or your Crunch account to get it to the point where it's like they're just talking to each other, and there wasn't a solution. And I was like, okay, so that's the thing.
So Dan, when is this? When is this inception? But you're absolutely right, because we launched into e-commerce, as you know, that must have been a year and a half ago, and the accountants were really, really keen to get their teeth into something really interesting. Our team tend to stay with us for a very long time, like 7, 8, 10 years. They're all amazingly trained. But priorly, Crunch just dealt with freelancer and contractor accounting, and maybe 4 up to 10 employee businesses. Not really exciting for really highly trained ACCA qualified accountants. And when I said about e-commerce, it's like, this is amazing. Their eyes lit up and they're all absolutely loving it. But I sat with them on some of the accounts and like, wow, that is so complicated. And, and they're working into the early hours on some of the our biggest accounts. But if you didn't have the automation, I just can't even imagine the pain involved in getting into the accounting solution. So when did this start? Because there can't have been hardly anything out there. Maybe there was the other feed company, or is it A2S or whatever it's, or A2X?
Yeah.
But there wouldn't have been many companies automating the feed. So what sort of time was this?
This is back in 2017, so just before I sold the business, because I never like to do nothing, so I'm always planning ahead. So I knew I was going to sell it, and I decided that, okay, well, really what I need to do is I need to find some software that I'm going to create. Like, I don't know how to do that. I'm not a software developer, but luckily for me, this is a bit of a side story, my biggest competitor on Amazon is now my business partner in the SaaS that I've got. He's called Pete. And Pete and I met because he emailed me anonymously through like a random email address that he'd made, saying that like, I'm a competitor of yours on Amazon. We're both selling the same type of products. I know that you probably mutually hate this other competitor who's doing a load of black hat stuff. Why don't we gang up on him, basically? And like, we'll come together and we'll make decisions together and we'll basically force him out of the market. And I was like, okay, let's do that. And then we became friends, even though we're selling competitive products and we're selling to the exact same customers. We realized that we had really complementary skill sets. Like, he ran his Amazon business very differently to how I ran mine. And so together we realized we could be a powerhouse, but we couldn't really be a powerhouse when we're competing products. So we decided that like one day it would be good if we could have a business together. And then he mentioned that he's a software developer. And I was like, oh, this is like a moment, a penny drops moment. Like, I've got the idea. Don't have the skills to do it. I've now found this guy who I genuinely get on with, and he's got the skills to do it. Now I just need to convince him to do it. And so I said to him, I said, listen, I've got this idea that we can automate bookkeeping for Amazon sellers, specifically in the beginning. There is something out there that's doing something similar now called A2X. I've tested their product, and it's not really great for the UK market specifically. Like, back then they were really focused on the US. They didn't really deal with that very well. And I was like, I think what we can do is treat this like a private label product. They have an existing product. Let's make it better. Let's focus it down into a niche for the UK, for Amazon, for Xero, and then let's create a product for that and expand out from there. And so it took me a while to convince him that he was going to sell his business as well, because I was like, this is going to be a full-time thing. You can't really have an Amazon business at the same time. I'm going to sell mine. This is the multiples you can get. Do you not want to do the same? Eventually convinced him, and then he already had sort of a functioning product that he'd built to do exactly what we wanted because he just built it internally himself. So we just took what he had and like beefed it out and then made it more customer facing. And that became LinkMyBooks. And that was back in 2017. We took our first beta customers in like, I want to say February 2018. And then I sold my business and he sold his in late 2018. And then we're just focused on LinkMyBooks since then.
Yeah, because I remember seeing it about that sort of time. Maybe it was 2018, and I saw it on Facebook appear as an advert. And I went and told the whole team the next week. I think it was over the weekend, and they're like, "Well, we don't need that, Darren, because we're just focusing on freelancers and contractors." Like, well, but no. I'm absolutely certain people keep asking for e-commerce. Can we do e-commerce? And we keep turning them away. So, that it obviously took me a lot longer to actually get the whole e-commerce product out the door. And of course, we had the pandemic right in the middle, didn't we? So not much was happening there.
Well, there's a lot of e-commerce businesses got set up in the pandemic because we had a flood of customers then.
Yeah, exactly. So it was after we thought that this is the opportunity. We've got to do it. I think literally Crunch, about 2018 was turning away 1,000 e-commerce businesses a year, and we weren't even advertising a bit about e-commerce or having that product set. Wow. So we had to do it, and by the time we did launch it, the accountants were really chomping on the bit for what can we do? Can we do some slightly bigger businesses? For us in accounting terms, FRS 105 is where we stopped, and it stopped at 642K. So it's not just e-commerce businesses, but it's the main one we focus on. So FRS 102 is the one they wanted to do, and that was over 642K or a certain amount in assets. But e-commerce was the one that's going to interest them and all of us. So I was really, really pleased, and reached out to you the second I actually got some form of approval from the team. So Pete's got he created this he had something working presumably so he didn't have a nightmare with his books.
Correct.
So he had a feed going into, what was it, Xero then?
Yeah, I think he was using Xero then.
He's based down under, isn't he? Is he in Oz?
He is now, but at the time he was in Bristol or Brighton. I can never remember which one it is, one of the two.
Right. Okay. I thought that might make even more sense to have Xero, but so he's got that feed and probably a rather cobbled together system. Yeah. And you start taking the beta customers on. Yeah. And I know completely what it's like building a software. We've done Pure 360 email marketing system that was avidly anti-spam. You build the first system, you demo that to a load of big customers, avoiding all the bugs in the system when you're demoing it, and then you've got enough customers, and then you go and build a proper production system. So I presume that's what you did. Did you? You got this
pretty similar
together system, and then he goes, right, this is looking good enough. I'm going to go and build this properly.
I think it's a bit of both, because I'm like extreme perfectionist and I want everything to be like 100% finished, and Pete is like the exact opposite. He's like he takes the 80-20 rule and makes it like the 50-50 rule, is the way I probably explain it. So he's like, if it's 50% done, it's pretty much done, just release it. I'm like, no, it needs to be like this, and this color needs changing, and that button needs to go there instead, and it would be better if a customer experience for like this, that, and the other. So I think we do make quite a good team, because we often meet in the middle. Like, he wants MVP, I want finished product, and we end up with something that's like 80% the way there, release it, customers give feedback, and then we'll make it the full way. And I think, to be honest, now, like 5-6 years down the line, I think that is what has really made us successful, is that we are so agile and we can so quickly release features because of that relationship, that we're mopping up on the market.
Yeah. No, that's great. Just that takes me back actually to Pure 360, and we used to see competition appear and be cheaper, left, right, and center, and you see them get to a certain point in growth, and they disappear. Yeah, like you're thinking, I really am quite perfectionist on like the brand and the copy and the getting across how passionate the business is, but also I want it to be built properly. This thing can't fall apart on the 2000th customer, so it has to be built like proper production grade or banking grade. That's what I did. Once you've done your prototype and showed that off to a few people, got some interest, then you go and build the production. This thing has to work. And I think the thing with Crunch is, unfortunately, the 80% right doesn't kind of cuss it, because we're talking about accounting and tax, and our system, my spec was this has to be live and absolutely accurate, so the system could auto do the VAT returns. If it gets it wrong, you're introducing a whole world of pain for the accountancy
and I'm
team.
not talking about 80% like that. I mean more
not
like
the accuracy.
How it looks, like the accuracy in the underlying back end system. That has to be 100% pinpoint accurate, 100%. But I think that like if we launch something and the font is wrong, or the text is not quite right, or there's a spelling mistake here, or like there's a button missing, and like you click this and it doesn't do anything, like that type of thing, a customer notices it quicker than we would ever notice it in beta testing anyway, because there's so many parts of the system, and then we'll fix it the same day, or you fix it the next day. So it's just like, it's a bit like what do you call Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, move fast and break things. Like, it's not quite that like that, but I think that it's definitely the way to stay agile. Like, I think if you've got to go through all sorts of red tape and have it checked by 6 people, and like it's got to go through a committee meeting before you can do a release, and you always do a release on a certain date. It's like, we release things every day. Every day there's something going out.
Yeah, so, it's continuous development, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called. The guys will like probably be shouting at me if they see this video. It's called something, but they're continually outputting it. But we have a whole range of testers, and it has to go through the accountancy team, and it's accurately checked. But our releases are slightly more painful, but there's definitely releases. And we've just hired another product designer, so we haven't had a product designer on the UX for a little while, so we're so looking forward to having you talk about the buttons, that perfection, the user flows. That's what I'm
that is
looking
fun,
forward
that part.
to.
I like that. Exactly. That's what I'm good at as well.
I would actually like that job. But so I get that. So just like, this is the tiniest question, because we don't want to make this a tech thing. This whole webinar series is to help incentivize, show people that so much is possible, and then loads of hints and tips. And you've given a stack already. On the technology stack. What did you choose? Just briefly on that one, because I don't think there's anybody too techie listening.
Yeah, so we use Symfony PHP for the back end.
Okay.
I'm going to list off a few things that I don't really understand how they work, but Rabbit, SQL, Redis.
Yep.
And then in the front end, we use Angular for like the overall code base.
Front end.
Yep. And then we use Webflow as our sort of like website publishing and
Snap
editing thing, sort of thing. Yeah, we used to use WordPress, but then we moved to Webflow, which is much easier.
Yeah, exactly. We've done
and then
that.
There's a few other things that we use, like we use Kubernetes, the Google servers, like because they are like super secure and they're like up to scratch in terms of cyber security, and they're very easy to like expand. Our databases run on those type of things as well. So it's like, as we grow, it's just dead easy to just expand that out. So a bit like what you said, like it's built for scale. Like we don't want it to be that the 2000s customers, which we've already got more than 2000, but when you hit 2000 customers, you don't want it to be like the millennium effect, and it's like, oh, now it doesn't work because it's hit like the nth number. So yeah, ours can scale much higher than that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think we're operating on a Java Spring language. It's a tech stack that is actually, if you probably anybody watching this will go and look at it. But Netflix has a big chunky tech stack, and we've got Rabbit in there. I don't think they're using Angular. They're using something else on the front end, but the team know Angular. And it's designed to be super scalable. I put the spec millions of accounts. Now, if I get to millions of accounts, then we would be doing this interview together in Monte Carlo. I would have flown you in on my private jet. But
I might have come on my yacht, so you never know.
Yeah, no, exactly. You'll be in like the tens of thousands of customers as well. So that's right. We're having such good fun, and I love this story. This is brilliant. I never knew the details behind it, but I knew it'd be interesting. And it's lovely, all these steps. I love that private label and the selling to fund the next one. So I think we better speed up, because otherwise this one's going to go on long. We've only got 45 minutes, really. What was the other one? So it's I think so we touched on scaling it, and we touched on the tech side. How have you managed to scale this business into like what sounds like over 2,000 customers and steaming forward. And clearly, and from our experience as a online accountant, way better, way more accurate. The right tax treatments and everything. So is it just the fact that it's a damn good product, that it's super scaling, or have you got some amazing knack in the marketing? How are you scaling this?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. I think it is a genuine good product market fit because, as I said, it's like a problem solution business. And I think they are the best businesses. Like you find something that there isn't really a good solution to, and there's a genuine need, then you come up with a solution that meets that need. You're off to a win and start straight away. So I think we've got that. And then I think because we are similar to Crunch, we are software and service. We're not quite like Crunch in that you've got actual accountants who do the work. But we have such a good philosophy around the software needs to be great, but the people need to be better. And so that's what we really pride ourselves in. If you look at any of the reviews, it's always like the software is great, does exactly what it's supposed to do. And the support team and the people who answer the questions behind the scenes, they are unbelievably good. Like the exceptional service. I've never had this level of service ever anywhere else. And we have accountants and bookkeepers who run our support team. And the reason we do that is because they can answer the questions. They have the knowledge. So when an accountant or bookkeeper who's using LinkMyBooks like yourselves asks a question, they speak that language. When an e-commerce business who's doing 100 million in revenue, Aaron Cordovez uses our platform. And when he comes in and asks, or when his team, and he doesn't never ask questions, but when his team come in and ask questions, we know it because we can deal with that level of scale. So I think that's two parts of it, like great product, amazing team around it. But then I think that like we've just been smart about the advertising avenues that we've taken. Like we haven't really done paid ads because I know you said you saw one in the beginning, but nobody really likes getting bombarded with ads. No. And when you do, it's like a financial product, so to speak, who's advertising directly to you on Facebook. Are you going to trust them? Probably not. Whereas if you come in via word of mouth, or we do a lot of work with affiliates. So we have like a lot of the people who run these courses, like Amazon courses, Shopify courses, Etsy course, how to sell on these platforms. We partner with them. We pay them a commission for referring customers to us, and then they build us into their course or they build us into their YouTube content. So we get a lot of business from that.
I see.
And then we do a lot of stuff around SEO. So like we've got 320 odd blog posts now, where basically our aim is to any question that an e-commerce seller or an accountant or bookkeeper who's servicing e-commerce sellers has around bookkeeping or accountant or VAT or tax or sales tax or GST or anything like that, because obviously we're international, we have the answer. We have a blog post that covers that topic. Or if they're searching like even something dead simple, like how do I get the information from Amazon to Xero? Like we need to be at the top. It needs to be that our sales page is there, and that also that our blog content of like, here's the different ways to get the information from Amazon into Xero. How do you do that? And obviously we'll be one of those options, probably the top one, if I'm honest. So I think there's a bit of that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the same as my principles, like right from the beginning. I think we're talking 2009. And I'd started to think about it in Pure 360, just before I sold that I wanted to, the next business had to help people. And when I realized that, I could go and, challenge that boring old dusty world of accountancy, you just wanted to answer all the questions I had and have, I'm not an accountant. What about this? What about that? But it shouldn't be just about accounting and tax. It should be about, well, how do I get out there? How do I network? How do I create a strong personal brand? So I'm loving the way you've done it. It's exactly the same as us. We hired a couple of content writers and wrote. And I don't even know how many articles we've got. And we tried to form a community, and it's still there in a way. And we built up, at one point, we're having 2,000 members join a month just before the pandemic. And it was an amazing thing, but it's very hard. We built a whole separate platform for it. And it's just too unwieldy to run. So we're looking at how we do the community in a different way, but I love that content play. We spend hardly any money on PPC. I mean, Google wouldn't like to hear that, but I mean, we're talking 5 to 7K a month at this point, and we might tweak it up. But there's like thousands. I don't know. I think thousands is an exaggeration, but certainly over 1,000 articles helping them in every way possible.
Yeah, we turned off all our paid ads. We found that like the money you put into making content, which is evergreen and is going to be there forever, and continues to rank on Google, versus creating ads where you have to be constantly creative, which like we're pretty good, but like we're certainly by no means able to pump out like 50 new ad copies per week. And I think that's what you sort of need in order to make that a success. No, we did a course on how to do Facebook ads, and it was with a guy called Dave Rosenberg, I think he was called. And he started while he was running the company that he was running. It was called Proof. It was like them little things on the bottom of the browser where it says like such and such has just bought this. He started that. And he did a Facebook ads course with like some business owners to generate funds for that business. And then it was just when OpenAI released their APIs, and he created what I think is now called Jarvis. It used to be called, maybe it's called Jasper, I think it's called now. It used to be called Jarvis. And he took that to be a unicorn in 8 months. 8 months.
Wow. Isn't that the one that does the scripts and stuff as well? What is it? It does ad copy, scripts.
Yeah, it does. It's like a marketing trained API is how the brand is. But this was like before ChatGPT. This was like 3-4 years ago. And when they brought it out and I played with it, I was like, this is good, like, but it's certainly not pumping out like perfect copy. It was like you could tell it like, do it in the voice tone of Bruce Wayne. And then like, I want to have this and that and that. And it was pretty good. So it was a bit like Michael it was a really early version of like ChatGPT, but they were just first to market. And he took it to a unicorn, got like investments, and basically the business was valued at $1 billion. And it was 8 months old.
Yeah.
And he told us he was spending $1 million per day on ads per day.
Oh God. Well, that's exactly what Google wants to do. But you always wonder about those high valuation ones that they're so heavily funded. And I always think about the entrepreneur that set it up. It's you and I, the vanity of it would be amazing. Billion, proper unicorn valuation, and then you actually look into the heart of it. They sell the business, and you go, look, well, how much did you end up having? And he goes, well, I had 0.8% of the business left after the VCs had rifled it and charged their exorbitant management fees.
I know.
But it's
that's my concern as well. Like, I don't think I would ever want to grow it that big. Like, I think we'll probably will at one point take on investment and like scale it, because I think you need money to do all these ads and copy and hiring of people and stuff like that. But I think at that point you do lose a bit of control of the business, and I quite like the control. I quite like what we're doing. I really enjoy the work, and I really enjoy building the product. And I think we're just getting started. Yeah, no, you are. It's fantastic business, and I think, look, Dan, that is the perfect drawing to a close comment that you've done. You're very well versed at this, aren't you? I mean, I had a whole stack of stuff on e-commerce best practices and tips and stuff, but we could do that to another time. But look, thank you so much for coming on the Crunch webinar. The e-commerce masters. We're now into finding, and we've got other e-commerce masters like you. I absolutely love what you did and created, that private label business, the swimming goggles, the getting it absolutely super tuned, and then realizing, well, how on earth do we have the cash flow to go to the next product and the next product, next product? Oh, I know, we'll sell that business, 6-figure sum, and we fund the next private label thing, which you worked on with a 25 product spread. I think that is a genius set of steps. And if anything's been incredibly useful for the people that are watching this webinar, is the series of steps you've taken. Because I immediately, when you were starting on the story, it's like, I would have gone for a loan. But in 2014, the bank manager was not giving loans for eBay or Amazon. No. So I love that approach. So look, it's been so useful. So anybody watching this for the first time, hope you found it super useful. Obviously Crunch, I don't think I did that at the beginning. Crunch is an online accountancy firm, and we have everything from a self-assessment all the way through to our e-commerce services, which is full service accounting and the software. And of course, we have Daniel on here because we use LinkMyBooks as the only product for all of the automated feeds, from whether you've got a TikTok shop all the way through to eBay to Amazon. And mainly we spent the time talking about Amazon today, but the full spread if you're going across all the channels. So that's what we do. And obviously LinkMyBooks is the full automated feed
a service to link up the zeros and the QuickBooks and now the free agent, as I understand, and have that flow of all those different channels from TikTok Shop all the way through flowing in. And it makes our accountancy team's life like an absolute dream. I just don't even know what they would do. We'd have to have a whole set of like senior bookkeepers setting things up and manually. I don't even know what they do, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, the world of automation is absolutely required in such a complex field as e-commerce. So massive thanks to you, Dan. And yep, hit the like button, subscribe to Crunch, go and look at crunch.co.uk or LinkMyBooks, look it up and go and look at their fantastic content and their product and try it out. And to next time, thank you so much.
See you later.